Hi, and welcome to our 2-acre world. Today we're going to be talking about shipping containers on the Homestead and how we use them here for storage. And the modifications we're going to go through. I have two 20-footers now, and I just secured, after many years of waiting for the prices to come back down, this 40-foot high cube. So this video I'm going to take you start to finish about the ground prep, setting up the footings, and getting the unit delivered and installed correctly. Check it out. Okay, so the first thing I needed to do was get some basic grading done. My lot is on a slope and usually runs about 3 to 4 degrees. So at that pitch, across 40 feet, it's about 20 inches overall that my tractor guide needed to remove. My tractor guide, being a local gentleman here, his name is Mike, he did the grading for the first 20-footer that went in. Those 20-footers I put on timbers. I dug a trench, I filled it with gravel, and I put 4x8 timbers in. They did end up settling a little bit, and I did have to deal with that later on down the road. So I ended up with a big hill of dirt from the previous 20-footers being installed, and that hill of dirt got even bigger, so I needed to start moving this dirt out of the way. So I had him go over to my corrals and backfill up underneath the cover where the horses stand. Over the years, they've squashed that dirt down significantly. The next thing I needed to do was to pull some line. I went ahead and took a bubble level and made sure that my tops of my footings were going to be exact so that when my container sat down, it was going to be completely flat and level. You can see my front two footings here. I came back with rebar and reinforced these before I poured the concrete. I do have a cement mixer here on the Homestead. Comes in handy. My neighbors have borrowed it. My daughter and son-in-law have borrowed it for their projects on their homestead. This is a cheap Harbor Freight cement mixer, and it's never let me down. I've had it for many, many years. And I couldn't find any of my concrete tools. Of course, so many of our things are in storage boxes that have no place to go. They're actually stored up underneath the deck. So I just took a 4x4 scrap piece and used that as my trowel, and it worked out just fine. I let these forms sit for about a week on the container guy's recommendation, and then I removed the forms. So on the container guy's recommendations, I built up some wood on the front, back side, and on the insides of my footings, and then backfilled that with dirt. He was going to have to do some maneuvering, and he knew that, and he didn't want to do any damage to my footings while he was manipulating his trailer back and forth across these. And it was a big event for the horses. They absolutely went crazy as the containers arriving down the street. However, they're pretending it was more exciting than it actually was, because they actually do that for the trash truck as well. So Dave took a stop on the street and I met him out there. He wanted to assess the situation first. So the first thing we did was check out my neighbor's property, which I needed to utilize, and I did get permission to do that. And then he checked out the site where it was going, and I had assumed that he was going to pull into my neighbor's property and then back in and back all the way in, but he had different plans. And when he came in forward, and I didn't question it one bit because he's a fantastic driver. He's always done me right. And he swung that thing around just like it was nobody's business. And it's big on the trailer. Between the trailer, the big tongue on this gooseneck, and the truck he was pulling with, it is a really lengthy package. So he wanted to get it parked in a general position there close by before he untied it. After he did that, he started his manipulation. It took him 2 or 3 times to get in there, which was a lot quicker than I expected it to be. But like I said, Dave's a great driver. He's always done well. once he got it back into position, you can see how close he was to my other container. I told him, get as close as you can and we'll worry about it later. And he is 1 inch away from my other container. That's how precise this guy is. I did have him use caution, however, on the front because I didn't want him to inadvertently whack the greenhouse. So I did have him just have that stick out a little bit, and I'll show you how I corrected that later. So he proceeded to drop it down on the back footings and landed it right where I needed it. And then he went into the offload process. And down she came with a boom. Once that was all the way down, he pulled himself on out, got paid, and sailed off into the sunset. I love this guy. He's always been accountable to me. It's nice when you can find people for your projects on the homestead, outside vendors and contractors and things that you can really, really count on. It's a big help. So there it is in position now. The container ended up being several inches off of where I wanted to be on the greenhouse side. I had him do that intentionally because I just didn't want there to be any damage to the greenhouse. Better safe than sorry. So my son-in-law came over with a buddy of his in a truck, and he had a receiver hitch up underneath this winch that you see. He's not pushing with the winch. There's actually a receiver up underneath there. Next thing I did was get this thing prepped for paint, and all I did was just wipe the dust and dirt off the letters. And I went ahead and put the first coat on, and as I'm doing that, I'm realizing, boy, this is really light. But the color match was correct. So I just went ahead and proceeded and figured, well, because it's white on the background, it's just going to take 2 coats. Ultimately, that's what it was. So I went through and did all of the inside first. Inside meaning the outside edge of the shipping container. Not the edges facing the street, the edge that's inside with the 20 foots. And I did that so I could practice painting. And then I cleaned off the outside letters and went ahead and proceeded to paint those. By that time, the first coat on the inside was dry, so I went ahead and did it, and then went back out on the outside and put the second coat on, and that ended up matching really, really well. It's not exact, but it's so close, I'm not concerned about it. And you can see here how tight the match is. You know, if you look real hard, you can see the letters behind there, but I just didn't want it to be obtrusive aesthetically. Well, let's start to finish the setup of our container. We had the tractor work done to get the grade relatively level and to make sure that they're lined up with the containers that were here. We pulled some strings, got them level, got them set up, and then we set up forms for concrete, reinforced them with rebar, poured some concrete footings, and then we had the container delivered and lined up and set in place. And then we were off a little bit. You know, we just brought in a truck and pushed that sucker over just a little bit to get it right where we wanted it. We also did a little bit of paint touch-up, getting rid of those big blazing white letters to make it a little more aesthetically pleasing. There's lots of containers in the community here. I would say probably 40-50% of the properties here have at least one storage container, and many times more. I still may move this footing here. It's still a little bit off. I'm not overly concerned about it now that we pushed the container over a little bit. But I still may do that, which would involve jacking the container up. If I do that, it's going to be before we put any weight inside. So our next projects are going to be installing a roll-up door, 5.5 or 6 foot roll-up door on this side over here. to give us access from the house side, and then also installing electrical and some lighting, and then also maybe some shelving units down the way here. But one of the biggest projects too is going to be building a wall about 7 foot inside here, and that's going to be to make this kind of a yard maintenance and ranch maintenance side, where I'll be able to have all my yard equipment, my riding tractor mower, my rototiller, line trimmers, things like that will all go over here and be isolated and just accessible from this side. And that way I can vent it properly, and I can store gasoline and things like that down on this end safely. Another thing we need to address too is going to be some of the rust. So I've got some rust patches on the back wall. I've got some rust. You can see one over here and right here. I've got some rust patches on the front door. There's several on the front of this one. Those are all going to have to be ground down and prepped for paint. And also on the corners, the edges, I've got some rust issues here that I've got to address and take care of before they get out of control. As far as the paint goes, I'm probably going to get out the airless paint sprayer to paint the back wall, and the front door is here. I'm probably going to leave the side. It actually turned out pretty good. As time goes by, we'll see how the paint on top of that white looks. If it starts to show a little bit, then maybe we'll go back and hit those with the sprayer. But for right now, I think I'm going to leave them and save the money. I'm comfortable with the way that it looks, and the container's sitting correctly, and I think it's going to be good enough. So I hope you got something out of this, and stay tuned, like, share, and subscribe so you can get some follow-up videos when we start cutting a hole in the side of this thing, which I'm really sketchy about, and getting the roll-up door installed. And that'll involve some fabrication and some welding and some metal work, and it should be a good time. And if you'd like to help the channel out, you can hit that Buy Me a Coffee button down below. That really helps the channel out. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
A simple life.